Welcome. And with us today, I have Wendy from New York. Wendy, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks, Cheryl. How are you?
So we know each other, and
Yes.
you don't live in my area in New York any longer, but you used to take my Zumba class.
That's right. My first Zumba class, and you're the reason I still today love Zumba. It's my
Yay.
preferred way of exercising because it's just absolutely fun.
It's so fun. And I just got done teaching a class. So it's so funny that I was thinking about you during the class while I was teaching. And I'm like, geez, when did Wendy take my class? Because I've been teaching at the school down the road from me for like 10 years.
And I think it
You
was
were
10.
Yeah, weren't you at like the Vent Fitness gym?
Yeah, yeah. And that was after my first child.
So yeah, that was like a decade ago. That's so cool that you reached out to say that you homeschool as well, which it's like there are a lot of homeschoolers in New York, but nobody from like the world that I lived in before I kind of woke up to reality. None of those people like homeschool or, live that kind of lifestyle. So it's so funny to hear people from my past that are like, "Yes, I'm on this path too." Where did you know you wanted to homeschool from the beginning?
No, actually, I was the opposite. I was never going to homeschool. I was very adamant that I didn't want to be my child's everything. But after the pandemic, it was 21. So my kids actually went to school the year after. And it was like a month into the school year, the following year. And I was like, I'm out. Like, I can't do this anymore. It doesn't make sense for us. And it's not really working for all of us. And I had some trust issues as well.
Okay, interesting. So how old are your kids and how many do you have?
Now, my oldest is going to be 12 this August. My twins are 8. And we're actually expecting our fourth in January. Thank
Congratulations.
you.
That's so exciting. Oh, so you got a 12-year-old and a baby. That's fun.
Yeah, it's going to be wild.
Yes, but that's so fun. I love it because, yeah, homeschoolers, just you're supposed to have lots of kids, right? I like,
Exactly. You know what? Let's just go for it. I just turned 40 in February, so I'm like, it's now or never.
I'm exactly 1 year older than you. I turned 41 in February. And we had like the 1 month where, because I'm trying to like not put a lot of toxins in my body anymore. I did a lot of damage the first 40 years. But we had 1 month where we like had a scare and I'm like, uh, we got to figure something out. I don't think I can do a third. They're a lot, but I love them.
They are. I mean, and we had twins, and that was bananas.
Oh, that's fun though. And so, okay, so your daughter was about 8 when COVID happened, and 7 or 8, and you were like
Yeah,
thinking this was nuts.
she was 6 and she was in first grade. And it wasn't until about 2 years later, I think, that I pulled them out. So yeah, she was 8 by the time I decided to homeschool.
What was it? You said trust issues. What was this kind of centered around?
I mean, I wasn't a huge fan of the COVID shot being pushed on children and hearing that some teachers in certain districts, not necessarily mine, were giving it to children without their parental consent.
What?
Yeah. So that was just kind of one part, but I had toyed with the idea because my oldest is autistic and I knew where she was in school and she wasn't like keeping up and I didn't feel like it was working for her. She's not the kid who can sit still all day long and just kind of do what she's told. She needs movement and a lot of it. And so homeschooling really allows us to work around her needs, and all of ours, honestly.
Yes. Are your twins, are they both boys?
No, I have all girls so far.
Okay, and you don't know for the next one.
We don't know yet for the little one. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we have all girls. So, yes, this is interesting because once I kind of like my son, I gave him everything on the CDC schedule and all that stuff. Never thought twice about it. And then
Right.
with the COVID, I started, watching The High Wire with Del Bigtree and like, oh, they're putting that in the COVID shot. And oh, that's how little they've actually studied the safety. Yeah, no, we're not getting that. And then they kind of would delve into the other ones. And I'm like, wait a minute, is this stuff parents like do I have the authority to question this? And it's so weird that they kind of make us like think we're not even able to. But so this was one of the fears I had. I think the first episode I talked about the fears of homeschooling, but then also my fears on sending them to traditional school. And one of my fears was like, I am worried that they're going to inject them with something, whether it be a flu shot that I no longer want them to have or the COVID shot or anything else, that they're going to take those liberties at school in the nurse's office or wherever. Maybe they have a truck pull up to the school and trust that my kids are going to come back the way I sent them. That was, and I felt crazy actually thinking that way. I'm like, am I nuts? Have I dropped off the deep end? But now that you're saying it, you have validated me so much.
Yes. I mean, having to have that conversation with your like 8-year-old and your 4-year-olds, don't let anyone do anything with a vaccine. Don't let them. I should be there if you are to receive anything. Because even the flu shot, you had to be there with your kid in order for them to receive it at the school. But when I get that kind of information, I'm like, yeah, I have trust issues now. And even more so as the political and social climate has changed and how we've opened up on this whole gender identity thing in public schools. I know for certain that my child would have been a target, and we would not be the family that we are, because we would be fighting just to keep her here and keep our parental rights.
Yes. And that's another thing. I don't feel like I talk about it a lot on the show, but I have a lot of opinions about it. I mean, know that the agenda behind this is to get our kids on pharmaceuticals for the rest of their life. And they want to depopulation. They want to depopulate there. They literally tell you on TED Talks and the World Economic Forum, they're telling you the world's overpopulated. We have to bring it down 15%. Bill Gates is on video saying it. So we know that they think there's too many of us. And then all of a sudden now they want to give our little ones things that would make them not be able to procreate later on. And just if they're on pharmaceuticals for the rest of their life, I mean, you kind of have to be if you're gender transforming. I would imagine you got to block hormones and estrogen and whatever for the rest of your life. So there is a customer for the rest of their lives. And it's like, would anybody really do that? But yeah, they would.
Yeah, unfortunately, we kind of have to believe almost everything these days, because, I mean, things have just been boggling your mind. Like, is that really happening? Actually, it is happening, and I didn't want to get into a situation where my daughter would say, I want to be a boy. And so I didn't want to be lied to, deceived, things to be kept from us, because we are her parents. We are ultimately in charge of her until she becomes an adult and is in charge of herself. And I don't trust that people would be honest with us. I mean, I sent her to school for therapies like the year after. It was like 4th grade. And the first question out of her speech therapist's mouth was, what does she identify as? And I was like, I don't understand. She is a girl. Like, I know that she might like being a boy, but it's like, it's called being a tomboy. And we've lost that term.
Yeah.
Over the past few years, and it is still a thing. She can dress however she likes. She dresses the way that she does because she has sensory needs. And so we don't like girl clothes because they're cut too close to the body. And so when she was 6, I could barely keep clothes on this child. And she was like naked in the backyard for the whole summer. I'm like, you're at least young enough to do this now.
Yeah.
So let's figure out what those clothes are. And it was just boy clothes. Stuff that was boxier, cut farther away instead of clinging. Yeah. And so it took some time. And her hair was also a sensory issue. And so that was cut off. She only started growing it back out over the past year or so, because she wants braids now. But, it's a physical pain for her. And so after a while, we just stopped fighting those things because they're trivial. Their clothes, their hair. Hair grows back. Maybe you'll like to wear girl clothes another time, but who cares if you don't? Be comfortable. Be who you are. That doesn't mean you have to change anything about your body.
Right. To chop something off, add something to it, or take a chemical to change what's going on physiologically inside.
Right.
Yeah. And I think about this, like the teachers, I feel like they're they feel that they are coming from a good place. Like the teachers don't feel like I'm going to get another one and, put this one on the tally marks. Like they feel like, oh, the parents just don't understand. Like the old Will Smith song or something from the 90s. The
Right.
parent, so they can come to me, but they don't see the world the way that we do with no, their pharmaceutical industries are targeting the kids to make lifelong customers, and you're stepping in and aiding the pharmaceutical industry that has already proved to us that they are liars and manipulators and will do anything to make a dollar.
And trying to keep our parental rights from us, which we are 100% entitled to. That's my
Yes,
kid. I get to make those decisions for the greater good, for her well being until she's old enough and wise enough to make those decisions on her own. If she chooses to do something about that when she's 18, she'll be an adult, not a child. And
exactly.
pre-pubescent child at the time.
Right. And even I experienced it with my son when he was 4. We sent him to a private preschool. It was only like a couple times a week, but they would put hand sanitizer on them every time they entered the school. And I would tell my son, I told them, I don't want hand sanitizer on his hands. If his hands are dirty, just send him to the bathroom to wash them. And,
Yeah,
there
soap and
is,
water is better than anything.
yeah, they're putting a chemical right on your child's hands. So it's seeping in, it's getting into their bloodstream. And I didn't want it on him. He was 4. 3 or 4. And so they were doing it anyway. And he had to tell me at 4 years old, Mom, they're still making me put hand sanitizer on my hands. And yeah, so I had to say to them again, and they were like, well, is it an allergy? It's again, the
Doesn't matter
parental
what it is.
rights.
Right. And, I had, my child at a younger age wasn't very open and verbal. I mean, she didn't really speak a lot until she was almost 4, 3, 4. She was in speech therapy at 3 years old. But, I wouldn't get any information out of her when she went to school. Like, how was your day? What did you do today? I learned. Like, that was all I would get from her. So it was, even more of a trust issue because I can't get any information out of this child. And so I'm just trusting that you guys are doing a good job for her, at blindly trusting. And after a while, I'm like, no, I can't do that anymore. I need to know what's going on. And, I probably became a little bit of a nuisance to her special ed teachers. You're going to communicate with me and like regularly,
Yeah. So
like every single day.
how has homeschooling her, what have you done to make learning easier for her? Like, I know there are probably parents listening that are like, oh, I couldn't homeschool my child because they have autism or because they're on the spectrum. So therefore, let the professionals handle it. They're better equipped than I am. And I know, just like you're nodding your head, that's far from the truth. What have you
Right.
done to help her learn in a way that the school can't offer?
Well, we had a really good example. She went back to school in 5th grade. She wanted to, and she was very much struggling at home. And so I allowed her to go back for a couple of months. I allowed her to go back. It only lasted a couple of months. But, she was in 5th grade and in a 5th grade math class when she was really more like first or second grade math because they really didn't cover it or make sure that she had mastered the fundamentals
Mm.
back during COVID and the year after COVID because that was her first and second grade years. So I am able to, and I told this to them at her progress report in November. She went in September and she was out basically after Thanksgiving. And at her progress report with her teachers, I told them, I said, you are limited. I said, I am not. I can do whatever I want. I said, so if I need to go back and master those fundamentals, I will. And I did, over the past couple of years. And yeah, she was in 5th grade with, barely a second grade math. And she's in 5th grade math. So she's feeling stupid and she's writing on her papers, I am bad at math. I am not smart. Nobody talks to me about this. I just see it on the papers that come home from school. And that bothered me. So, I can do what I need to do to meet her where she truly is and adjust our curriculum, adjust how I teach, what we use as our resources in order to help her along, not let her sit and flounder
Yeah.
and feel worse and worse about herself.
Well, and I wonder how many kids in the class were just like her. And it was like, okay, but this is the curriculum this year. So we're rolling with it. No child left behind. You all have to pass
Right.
this one way or another.
I mean, the truth is that I talked to her special ed team a couple of times, and they're just telling me, even though she has an IEP, that there's not enough room in the remedial math class for her. There's already too many children in that class to make room for a autistic child who needs that help also. And I thought, well, it's crap. You make room, you figure that out. But also, now we're not following her IEP, which, in my opinion, and as far as my understanding goes, is against all of the rules and the laws with special education children.
Mm-hmm.
They're supposed to do that. And then I just get, crap answers like, there's not enough room. And I'm like, you cannot seriously leave her in fifth grade math. She can't do it.
Yeah.
Nor should she. She needs to go backwards because you guys didn't make sure that she had it. And yes, I had her for third and fourth grade and I missed it too. I was trying to just kind of pick her up where I thought she was, but that's not where she was. So we've had to go back. And even this year, as a sixth grader, we had to go and do a whole unit on subtraction just so that we had that fundamentals. But we did it in 8 weeks, and then we did multiplication, and we're going to finish next week.
And that brings up pretty much like what I'm doing with my son right now, because he's technically should be ending his first grade year if he were in the traditional school. But we've jumped around a little bit for reading because, I tried All About Reading with the pre-reading for the kindergarten year, and he liked that, but I wanted to see what other curriculums were like. So, I picked up I think it was Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons. And then I mixed that with something else. And the first 50 lessons were great, but then he got to lesson 50 and it was like Mount Everest for him. So I took a break. We did just kind of like, I just read to him. Then we picked it back up from lesson 1. The minute he got to lesson 50, again, it was just the paragraphs were so long and it was just really hard for him. And I was like, okay, I can't make him struggle with this because he's just not going to enjoy reading ever. So
Right.
I, asked around for some tips, some pointers. We tried a few different things. I ended up landing on where he's working right now on Reading Horizons. I think one of my guests, Natalie, recommended Reading Horizons, and it is online, but I mean, he kind of likes that. I feel like he feels like he's got ownership of it. He's got agency there. It has some games in it. It has lessons, and it's teaching him the fundamentals. But I started him at the kindergarten level, and this was a few months ago. So he was like, technically, all his friends in school would be finishing up their first grade year, and he was starting. I started him at kindergarten. I was like, I'm sorry, but if it's easy, you'll go through it really fast. And if it's
Right. And
not
then
easy,
build on those skills from there, because starting farther back, because I did the same thing. I went back to like first grade because I'm like, we're like still counting on our fingers and we should be farther than this. And so I went all the way back just to make sure that we could have a little confidence in what we were doing and feel good about ourselves. And yes, I know that, and build from there. And math is still a struggle. Reading is a struggle, but that's also a vision thing for her as well. She's had glasses since she was 3 as well. So you can't push it because then she's just pushing back. Instead of just kind of finding that happy medium of where I can teach her and she's learning and we're not flipping out and having meltdowns all the time, either one of us.
have you found ways to mitigate that?
I I have to pick and choose my curriculum. It can't be overly wordy, overly cumbersome. It kind of has to get right to the point. And I'm at a point now that I'm piecemealing our entire curriculum. I am on Pinterest all the time looking for just different lessons and different games. I will reach out to another homeschool mom who is actually a former teacher, and she's got 4 boys, and one of them is also autistic. And I'm like, please help me with a resource that will work when it comes to this math. Cause like I'm like, we're not making any headway. And she recommended Kate Snow and what was it? Subtraction facts that stick. They also have addition, multiplication, division, and then she has a whole bunch of other like curriculum math. Math with confidence, I think is what it is.
Okay, I've heard of
And
that.
that's been working. I picked up subtraction and multiplication, and like I said, we're almost done. And next year we get to do division.
Okay.
So just building blocks, building upon what she already knows, so that way we are confident and we can move on to the other things. Because without those fundamentals, she's just going to struggle for the rest of her life.
Right. And how long did it take you? You said you started back at like first grade. How long did it take you to get to what level are you at now?
We're closing in more on fourth. I've been more focused on
Hmm.
key areas of struggle, key areas that she needs to work on. I'll Google it. I'll
Hmm.
Google what does a third grader need to know,
Okay.
and it just spits out all that information. And I'm like, I'll write all of that down, and then we'll just start kind of chipping away at that information. But yeah, we're closer to fourth grade because it took us last year. It took us like we had to do like not all first grade, but we had to do a good portion of it and second grade kind of math. And the twins are in a very similar situation. They're finishing up second grade right now. So I can kind of do a lot together.
Yeah.
And with a child who is on the autism spectrum, you have to understand that their brain works differently
Hmm.
and they probably won't be at the same level as their peers. And that there's nothing wrong. That's just how their brains work. And they learn they usually learn differently. So making it more fun, more play. So games work nicely. But a kinesthetic way of learning is also helpful. Having that hands-on ability helps them learn in a very multisensory way.
So what have been some of the tactics that you've used or found that really worked on Pinterest?
Games,
Like
just a
board
lot of
games or games that they just kind of do up and
they
you can
kind
do
of
at home with what you have?
yeah, they just kind of do them up or I replicate them. Even like spelling, we are atrocious with that. And so this year I was hyper focusing on math and spelling because it was just bad. So I found that crazy spelling was something I found on Pinterest. I recreated it myself. And it's just you use a dice and whatever they roll, that's what they get to do they write down their spelling words. So it could be like funky letters, cursive, write it 3 times. There's a few other ones, 6 different ones. They loved it. They wanted that every day for a while. And so it's just changing things up too so that we're not getting bored
Yeah.
because she's also ADHD. So we get bored with things. And so we just need things to be a little bit more exciting
Hmm.
and make sense in real life.
That's key. That's key to make it relate to something in their world.
Right.
Because if you
So
just spit
we've been doing
numbers,
fractions
yeah.
on pizza for years. And I did it again when I made pizza this past week. I'm like, what is this? And what, if I cut it like this, what are they now? And I cut it like this. And, and she's really starting to grasp it because it makes sense.
Yeah. Yes. And I try to do that like with my son when he's doing math, and he'll write, okay, here's the word problem. And he just usually knows to write the first number he hears and then the second number he hears, but they'll try to trick him every now and then to make sure he's putting the larger number first to subtract.
Right.
And I have to turn it into a money problem and say, okay,
Right.
so if you have $7 and I took 13 from you, how's that going to work? And then he knows it clicks. Oh, I have to switch the numbers around because he's not into like integers or anything yet, negative. So, I have to put it in terms like money because that he'll get. Or I'll
Right.
use like, okay, if these screws are lug nuts for a tire,
Yeah. Exactly right. So real life, real things that make sense to them. Another thing that I picked up that I didn't finish this year because we were doing it with the family, but was grocery cart math. And so it was
Ooh,
like once a week we'd go to the grocery store near us, and during the day nobody's there. It was a small little grocery store, so I knew that the kids could just kind of go anywhere and do whatever the task was. Find items that are less than $1.
Oh my God, how fun. I can't
Yeah,
imagine my
and
two
at one
terrorizing
point,
this grocery store.
oh yeah, I would take over the grocery store with my 3, and then I brought in another family who brought her 4. And so it was just bananas, but everybody loved it, raved about what we were doing.
That is so cute. So you do find something under $1. What were some of the other things?
It was about size. You need to find things that come in a gallon or a quart or a pint. And so we're looking at ounces on the containers
Mm.
and we're comparing them. We might even be, what, and then we would go to like a pound, but we might compare them. If you were to get 2 pints or 1 quart, which would cost less
I
type
love
of,
that because you're
yeah,
doing the which would cost less, but you could also do which would equal, would this equal the other? Which would be bigger? Which would have more volume in
right,
it, more liquid?
right.
I love this. I'm trying to
I
think
picked that
of a
up off
small
of
grocery
Amazon.
store. We have other stores. It might not be a grocery store here, but we have even
But
though I'm
just a couple of kids, you can just go up and down the aisles and you can
yeah.
even just like help them. Like, well, if we're looking at ounces, we're probably looking at liquids. If we're looking at pounds, we might be looking at a solid or a box, something. But, ounces are still on a lot of those boxes and a lot of those other packaging.
Yeah, I bet you
And then
adults don't even know
that's
that.
a whole other thing, that we're not just learning about math anymore. We're learning about, ounces and weight
Yep.
measurements, which I mean, of course, is still math, but
Yeah, but
it's
it's science.
it's different parts of it. Yes.
And that's one of the things because I'm putting together an ebook right now on like things that I've learned from all the people that I've interviewed, like to what are the overarching themes of this? What are the things that stick out? And that has been one of them, how in homeschool subjects blend so easily. And that's part of the reason why they're in school for 6 hours or more, and you only need to do homeschool for maybe an hour, give or take. But because you can blend things like math and science and history and writing and art,
You
and
can.
it's so
And it's
easy
better
to.
to even learn that way because then they have that connection between everything and just make it easier for you as the parent, but also more interesting and fun for them, but like to kind of keep going with that one subject. Like, or that one topic is what I mean. So if you're talking about, the Revolutionary War, because
Yeah.
we've been doing that this year, we might watch a video on it because there's a great show, Liberty's Kids, that covers them they're absolutely wonderful. So they get to watch a video. But maybe we'll read a book that talks about the clothing of the Revolutionary War. And so we talk about what they wore, how they got their goods, and the fact that they had to make them back then. How did they have to make them? And we can write about that too. What was the most interesting thing that you learned? And so you are crossing the subjects constantly, and you really haven't changed the subject at all.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back to my history class and maybe why I was so terrible at history. I don't remember them making me like write anything about it or do any projects. It was just like the projects would be more science class and the writing would be more your writing class, and
Right.
reading was separate. But yeah, and maybe that's why none of it ever stuck. And that's why the
Right.
only thing I know about the Revolutionary War is what I learned in Hamilton. So that was probably a biased
Right.
liberal
Probably.
side anyway.
I mean, I remember just doing, like, in my school, we were able to do some of those special projects. I remember it was like, I don't even know what it was called that day, but like we went outside and we cooked on fire with like cast iron. Like, and you were encouraged to dress up, and the teachers did. And I remember that, and you remember those things that you did that were hands on. That was an experience, not just a lecture or busy work.
Yeah. And I haven't done stuff like that with my son. He's 6. He'll be 7 soon. I almost am like, well, one, I don't feel super creative. Two, I'm like, I don't want to do all this stuff and then have him forget it and have to redo it again in 3 years. But I
Right,
do
right,
have a love of history that I never knew I had. And just
right.
learning this, I think we're just learning more like in the world around us and like the books that we get from the library. I'll select the books and have them order. Like I'll go on Read Aloud Revival. What's her name? Sarah Mackenzie. So she does Read Aloud Revival, and she's got all these book lists, and I'll order the books from the book list through my library's app to come to
Mhm.
the library, go pick them up. So they're all there waiting for me. And, I'll get like sometimes 30 at a time and just keep them for a month. And sometimes they're on themes like, springtime or a holiday or something. So that's been cool. I've learned a lot about history just through, or like the Tuttle Twins books. Oh my God, the history.
Yeah.
I learned way more.
That's how I saw you and what you were doing because I had seen the Tuttle Twins ad because I have the book series. My kids have watched the Tuttle Twins show, and what we have like I think some other like kind of comic book thing from them as well. And you know what? That's the one email that I actually read every time it comes through.
I agree with you. I read them too, and I don't read anybody else, but I always learn something
No.
about government and what's going on in the
Yes.
world.
Yes, and they've really helped us even as adults to really break down that information so that we can be more empowered and more in understanding of what's really happening and what that stuff means. Because, you don't ever feel like you were really taught all of that.
Mm-mm.
Some of it maybe, but not all of it.
Well, when I had Connor Boyack, who wrote the Tuttle Twins on my show, he said it perfectly. He was like, you send them to a government school that's paid for with government money, taught by government employees. Why would they teach you anything else other than government is the solution for everything?
Right, right. They're biased.
I mean, it makes so much sense. Like, yeah, all right, that makes and yeah, things that you just wouldn't even think to question. I never questioned this stuff before. And like I said
No,
earlier on, I didn't even know I had the authority to question it. They kind of dumb us down in society to feel like you're just mom. You don't really know.
right. Or they just, kind of make you just feel like, well, you should just kind of do what everybody else is doing. And I'm
Hmm.
like, yeah, my husband and I don't really do that.
So, what has been some of the pushback? Have you had any from family members or friends since you decided to homeschool?
For the most part, it's been like my husband's family. They're full of teachers. And so we still get it today where it's, well, what school district are you in? I'm like, I don't know. I don't care. Like, I didn't move here for a school district. I moved here for my property. Like, I don't, I have no intention of sending them back. Or just, well, how are they doing in school? So it's like you always just feel like maybe they're trying to interrogate you.
Mm,
But we've been, this is our fourth year that we're completing. And I think at this rate, they are getting more on board,
yeah.
and it's like even helpful. Like I had my mother-in-law, she had to take the kids while we were moving. And I'm like, we still need to do school. So here it is. I like gave her all of the things. This is what we need to do. She did that and more, which
Okay.
was helpful to me. I'm like, thank you. I didn't have the time to do this. And I've had to repeatedly explain to them why and open their eyes a little bit to what's really going on because you don't have children in the system.
Yeah.
You haven't been a part of the public school system in a long time, but things are different now. And I grew up in public school, so I was a believer, was going to send them, no big deal. But things change and you have to do right by your kids. I had some friends too who were just like, well, just send them back to school if you're so, stressed out about it. I'm like, I can't do that. Like, I can't do that. And like my right mind, send them back. I don't believe in it anymore.
Yeah. A
And
thousand
even my
percent.
kids, now they don't believe in it either. They know that they don't have to sit in school for 6 hours a day.
So So you said that your daughter went to school for about 3 months and you pulled her out because of not meeting her where her needs were. But how did she do socially with the kids? Did she like going to school? Did she have any issues with how they treated her?
Actually, the reason that she stopped going is because she was having panic attacks and she refused to go back.
So then how
I
come
had
she
had
wanted to?
She wanted to go and she was fine with children who were like her. There were two other children that she gravitated towards, and they were in her therapy classes. The best friend that she had had since she was 4, they were no longer like talking. They were in the same school and they didn't even get together anymore. She gravitated to neurodivergent children like herself. And so we didn't really socialize all that well, even though she was in a social group therapy class. It just seemed kind of silly. Like she's not really, progressing in that area. We're really just allowing her to stay where she is and to kind of be more childish.
Mm.
Where she's, getting older, we need to be, more advanced and do better. I mean, she was never really picked on as far as we know. That these kids knew her since she was 4. So that was always a blessing. And they'll see her out and they are like, "Hey Haley, hey Haley's mom," and they're just, excited to see her. She's loved dearly. But she is a very picky person when it comes to who she spends her time with. And that's who she would choose, children like herself. And I understand that, and that's fine. But, we need to learn how to be a little bit more grown up. We are getting older. We are changing. And we need to kind of get on board with that instead of reverting back to baby behavior.
Yeah, because it's easier. And yeah, it is hard. And I think that it's so easy to throw your hands up and say, all right, just go into the school district where they know what they're doing and let them handle it. But when you homeschool, what's been probably one of the biggest challenges for me is being there to watch my kids interact with others, or particularly my son, because I don't know, you don't have to think about it when you're at work and your kids are at school. Like, I didn't remember thinking about it when he was in daycare, but he was so young too. But now that I'm there for all of the group things that we do, the co-ops or the play groups or whatever, I just have noticed over the years that, wow, he really has a tendency to either he needs to be the one that everybody gravitates to, or he goes off on his own. Like, there's rarely that in between where I can just be part of the group and I don't have to be the lead guy. And if I'm not the lead guy, I'm going to go off on my own or with younger kids. And for a while, I mean, I would be like, all right, what's going on? How come you're leaving the kids here? And I get it now. Like, he doesn't have to be with the kids his age because that is silly. He can be with what you were saying struck a chord with me because I'm like, oh yeah, I've seen my son leave multiple groups with kids his age to go be with the little kids because he's the authority to them. It's not like a challenge for who's the alpha, he's the alpha because he's the older one. So it's
I
been
noticed
interesting.
that I noticed that too a little bit with Haley. Well, she loves babies. She loves little people. She wants to teach them things. And so honestly, she's probably going to have a life in childcare. And being almost 12, it's good to know that now. And that might just be her life path as she gets older. And we can help facilitate that.
Yeah.
I watch my nephew once a week or twice a week right now. Um, and he just turned 1. She loves being with him, loves holding him and doing all the stuff with him. And she doesn't love kids her own age for the
Interesting.
most part, but maybe just a little bit younger than her. So she has chosen a few people who are just maybe a year or 2 younger than her, but that makes sense for where she is intellectually. She is probably closer to where they are in her mind.
Yeah. And to go back to before too, like teaching her, on the 5th grade level or, 3rd grade level or whatever, it's like sometimes their brain just needs more time to be able to connect those synapses. And
Exactly right.
yeah, there's like, it's silly to think that everybody should learn the exact same thing the exact same way at the exact same time in their life. And that at 18, you need to have known, X, Y, and Z in order for you to take the next step in your life. Because, now that I've quit my government job and I'm learning more home with my kids or doing the podcast or whatever than I ever did in school and college or at sitting in a cubicle doing government work.
Yeah, yeah, we have the ability to do that, to learn all those things, and we're learning them to help our children. But then I'm like, oh my goodness, you guys notice this? And I'll just rattle on about how cool and interesting and how this makes sense and how this connects to that.
Hmm.
And they're like, oh my goodness. And they get really excited too, right alongside me. And so that's happened actually a lot with the Tuttle Twin show. I was constantly pausing it to explain, and they're like, stop it.
That's so funny. It relates to everything. I love the Tuttle Twins.
I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense now. Like, this is why. Do you understand?
Yes, we needed they like take these concepts and like dumb them down for the people who were publicly educated so that it makes sense.
Right? Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so
There's
true.
so much that my husband and I learned by watching those.
Yeah, and their book series, the age 5 through 11, is awesome
Mhm.
too. I'll put a link and a coupon code in the show's description so people can, go look at the link, grab the or click on the link, look at their site, and use the code if you want 15% off. But yeah, I love their stuff. I bought their stuff actually before I started kind of being an affiliate for them, so it sucks. I didn't use any discount codes, but I just loved reading that stuff. And like you were saying, it was more for me at the time because my son was little. But I was like, wow, I didn't know this is how the Federal Reserve works.
Right. And we would read them for story time at night. And, it would take us a couple of days to get through it, but
Mm.
it covered our patriotism and our citizenship check mark on our reports.
Yes, that we need in New York State. Oh my God, I love that though. I when I read that on the HSLDA website that we need to do patriotism and citizenship, I'm like, I'm pretty sure they're learning anti-patriotism in school. So what is this about? They're holding the homeschoolers to a higher standard, but that's all right. Oh, that's great. So any like as we close up, last like things that you wanted to make sure, told people or words of encouragement or even like bits of I don't know, just I know that people always ask me about homeschooling kids who are autistic or on the spectrum, and is there helpful pointers? So anything you have that you can give them from your tool belt,
I mean,
toolbox? I don't know.
one of the biggest things, is we know our children the best. No one is as invested in our children as we are. So it's an empowering thing because, you're the safe place. They are going to come home from, public school and maybe completely lose it because you are their safe place. And who is better than the genetic makeup that made that child to teach that child? Not necessarily someone who's fresh out of college who doesn't know anything about autistic kids. I even had a English teacher who was homeschooled himself. He didn't know a thing about autistic children. And so he just wouldn't really know what to do to teach my child.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we are the best equipped people and we care the most. No one is going to love them and care about them and invest in them and have to look at what their future might be. We're the ones who have to figure all of that out and make the best decision for them. And if that means we have to go back a grade or three, like I have, do what's right for them. Because one of the statistics that I had read about was I think it was only 6% of autistic children live in successfully independently from their parents as an adult.
Really?
And that was a statistic I wasn't allowing my daughter to become.
Right. Wow.
I think that they get given up on. They get pushed aside. You know what? They're just not going to get there. And that's crap. They can if they're given the right tools, if they're learning in the way that they learn. If you have the tools, there's a million tools. And I mean, Pinterest is a phenomenal resource and YouTube as well. And I know that sounds silly, you're taking them to, YouTube and Pinterest, but I mean, there's so many other parents just like us who have figured it out. Have figured out at least a multitude of different options, and you can pick and choose based on your child's interests or do a unit study and something that they're really interested in because they can hyper focus on something, which is one of those wonderful things that children on the spectrum can do is hyper focus. My daughter was obsessed with trains for 2 years. And I mean, it got really tiresome here, but she loved it. And so why not take trains and teach all of the subjects?
And it's so easy now. You can go on to Chat GPT. I did it earlier today. And you can say, I have a 12-year-old daughter with autism. She likes, dirt, getting her moving,
Kinesthetic. Yeah.
and kinetic sand. And she loves trains, and I want to incorporate math, science, reading, history, all of that. I want to do it for 1 hour a day, 3 times a week. for 4 weeks, can you create a unit study for me? And it will spit it out for you. You can
Right.
ask for, please include library books that I can get from the library, videos on YouTube or other places, documentaries on the subject. And you can say, like, the subject needs to be trains, or the subject needs to be the history of the state of New York or volcanoes. It can be anything your kid is into, and it can
Right.
go into the history, and from the history you can even branch out into, like, okay, well, who was living there during, this time or that, it branches, but it's relevant. Like you said before, it relates to something they want to learn about.
Right. Because, I mean, most of the time they're just learning something that's arbitrary to them. I don't understand. Why do I need to know this? What does this have to do with anything? And making it make sense is a key to getting them interested in it. And when they're interested in something, then they're going to learn about it. And that even helped with my daughter's reading. She found this one book that she liked, and that helped her continue to read on her own. More of an easier chapter book, but I mean, I will take it. I will even take those Roblox books that got awful to read. I can't stand them, but she likes them and she's reading, and that makes sense.
Yes. Oh, I love it. Wendy, you had so many bits of inspiration in there. I am going to have a hell of a time trying to make reels and stuff for social media for that, because there's so much. It was so good. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. This has been wonderful, and it's been so nice reconnecting with you.